This show is live. Despite our best efforts, anything can happen. Some viewers may be offended. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, bonsoir. Welcome to our federal election panel discussion for the Sudbury Riding. I am Marie L'Italien, President and CEO of the Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce, and also your moderator for this evening. For those of you who may not know, part of the role of the Chamber of Commerce is to advocate to government on behalf of our members, the businesses of this community. I'm thankful for the opportunity to hear from our local candidates on the issues and challenges that matter most to the residents who live here and to the businesses who play such a vital role in the quality of life and economic vitality of our region. Now, before we begin, I will perform a land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional lands of the Atikameksheng Anishinaabe, and the large area we consider Greater Sudbury also exists within and adjacent to the territorial lands of the Wanapitei First Nation and the Sagamok Anishinaabe. We honor, recognize, and respect these Indigenous peoples as the traditional stewards of the lands which we share today. I would also like to acknowledge the Métis and Inuit people for their contributions to the land and to our community. I believe it is important that we take a moment to recognize the significant and lasting impact Indigenous peoples have had and continue to have on our economy and our growth locally, provincially, and across the nation, despite the many challenges before them. I am committed to learning and listening as I undertake my path towards truth and reconciliation. So thank you to our candidates and to those who took the time to be here. I want to acknowledge our Board of Directors members here this evening. If you could just raise your hand so everybody knows who you are. Thank you. And also Chief Larry Rock of Wanapitei First Nation. Thank you for joining us this evening. So in alphabetical order, by surname, we have Vivian Lapointe, Liberal Party of Canada, Ian Symington, Conservative Party of Canada, and Nadia Varelli, New Democratic Party of Canada. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how things will unfold this evening, just so everybody's aware of the rules of procedure. So first, each candidate will be invited to address the audience for 2 minutes with an opening statement. Following this, I will ask a series of questions to be answered by each of the candidates. These questions will be a mix of those relevant to the business community and to the members of the Chamber of Commerce, and questions from the audience here tonight. Questions will be asked to all candidates. We will not be directing questions to individual candidates. Audience questions will be reviewed by our chamber team to avoid repetition, ensure their relevance to the federal government, and to keep a very respectful tone to our conversation this evening. You may ask your question in French or English. I will translate it and ask it in both languages to the candidates, who can then choose to answer in both or in one or either. So you can give your written questions at any time throughout the evening to a chamber staff member. They're around and they have name tags like mine. Aditya, do you want to just put up your hand? And Agatha as well. Where's Agatha? There we go. So you can give your questions to them. We may not get through all the questions. We already have several. So I'll ask that perhaps if the candidates are willing, we can submit some of them after and post those answers to our website and put some links so everybody has the opportunity to get their question in. So although our responses are not timed, we do recommend keeping your answers to 2 minutes just so we can get through as much as possible this evening. So as the moderator, I may engage with candidates to request clarification or elaboration for any response. Other candidates may also challenge a response by signaling me, and I will then call your name once everyone has had the chance to respond. Please do so in a respectful manner and do not interrupt each other. As a moderator, my job is to keep us on track and ensure everyone feels welcome and comfortable. I may ask for microphones to be muted or interrupt comments that are monopolizing our time together or that are disrespectful. To our very engaged audience, thank you for being here. Please do not shout or interrupt our candidates. I am more than sure that they would be happy to speak to you after the event if you have any questions or comments on what they said here this evening. Following the Q&A, each candidate will have 2 minutes to wrap up. And I want to thank Eastlink for being here to live stream our event. They're a great supporter of the Chamber, and it allows as many people as possible to be engaged in our election process. So I very much appreciate that. So now we'll begin with our introductory remarks. Viviane, you can go first.
Good evening. Salut et Annie. I want to thank the Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce for inviting us all here this evening. Et aussi un gros merci à Collège Boréal for hosting us here. I want to talk about what a life in Canada would look like under a Mark Carney-led government. In Donald Trump, Canada faces a threat unlike any other in our history. And it's not just a threat to our prosperity, it's also a threat to our sovereignty. Mark Carney is the only leader in this election with the experience as well as the know-how to lead Canada through this very difficult period. As the only person in history to have served as a governor of 2 national banks, Mark Carney has been the right leader in the right place for some of the biggest financial storms in the past 20 years. Mark Carney knows that the business of nation building is not achieved through reckless axing and slashing, as we've seen Elon Musk do south of the border. With a keen eye on spending less and investing more, you build a nation by investing in its people, in its businesses, and innovations. You build a nation, as Mark Carney says, by building things we never imagined at a pace we never thought possible. So what does this mean? Expect massive housing investments not seen since World War II in this country. Expect infrastructure corridors, significant investments in the Canadian Armed Forces, and also a focus on energy independence, all while interprovincial trade barriers comes down. Mark Carney has laid out a plan that balances fiscal diligence with nation-building pursuits, all rooted in staunch sovereignty. All of this work, combined with reshaping our national industrial supply chains, will require a steady source of metals and, of course, critical minerals. And that's where Sudbury comes in, with our world-class mining expertise, unique concentration of skilled workers, and the many innovative businesses that call Sudbury home. In short, Sudbury, like the rest of Canada, will be in the business of nation building. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll ask Ian to go next.
Thank you, Marie, and thank you to everyone at the Chamber for organizing the event. Thank you to everyone for being here, including our 2 candidates with me for sharing their ideas. It's been a busy 4 weeks on the campaign trail. It's been cold and blustery, but busy. For myself and my team, we've been knocking doors for over a year, meeting people across all of Sudbury, and most importantly, listening to what they have to say, what they need and in what direction they want Canada to move. Feedback is about how much things cost, how unaffordable life is getting, despite having an education and a good job, and for many parents and seniors, how hard it is for their kids to get a house or even to get ahead after going to school and getting a job. Life under this government isn't working. Recently, concerns have moved to Donald Trump and tariffs and how Pierre Poilievre and a conservative government would deal with the threat from the south. What we've seen from Mark Carney is a lot of talk, a lot of meetings, but not much going on. Zero impact with the trade talks. The fact is no one can control Donald Trump. Conservatives know that for our economy to thrive in these unpredictable times, we have to work around Donald Trump and play to our strengths, something Pierre Poilievre has been advocating for over the past 5 years in opposition. We need to maximize our resources. We are one of the richest countries in the world when it comes to minerals and energy. We need a government that will build the pipelines the Liberals abandoned so we can move our oil and gas to each coast and out to the world that needs our energy. We need a government that doesn't put up roadblocks, barriers, and years of red tape to get new mines moving. We need a government that wants the Ring of Fire to succeed. We need a government that won't ignore the economy like the last 10 years. We're kidding ourselves if we think there's a magic pill or a certain skill to dealing with the Americans right now. To succeed, it's up to us to find new markets.
Thank you, Ian. Nadia?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm excited to be here with you tonight. Thank you to the Chambers for organizing, to those of you taking part here at Collège Boréal, and to Sudbury voters who will be hearing about the debate from our friends in the media. If I haven't met you at your doorstep, my name is Nadia Verelli, the NDP candidate in Sudbury. I'm a professor of law and justice at Laurentian University, the daughter of working class immigrant parents, and someone who wants the best for our community. Every election is important. Every election is special. There are some with predictable outcomes and stale storylines, others driven by star power or scandal. Almost all happen in the time of crisis. Today, my fellow candidates will remind you that Canada is in crisis, but they won't be talking about the climate crisis, ever mounting damages to homes and businesses caused by wildfires and severe weather. They won't be talking about the opiate crisis, exacerbated by homelessness and hopelessness. They won't mention the crisis of femicide. Gender-based violence won't be top of mind. Neither will they talk about the incredible burnout rate of our doctors and nurses. All of these not only have a devastating social impact, but a very real economic one. And even the heart of affordability crisis will largely be forgotten. For thousands of Sudburyans, a huge share of monthly income is devoured by out-of-control rent, rising food prices, trapping the young and old in a cycle of poverty, all but eliminating their ability to contribute and to benefit from our growth and prosperity. This is my promise to you. I and the NDP will not forget these issues. As difficult, complex, and unpredictable as Trump's tariffs, these issues deserve our attention. And I'm here to tell you there are solutions if the people we elect have the courage to pursue them. And that's why I'm running. The NDP has that courage. We'll stand up for the North and we'll stand up for you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll now begin the question period. I was actually going to ask a simple question just to get us started, but I decided we'll just get right into it because we have many questions tonight. So let's start talking about some of the issues that our chamber members are concerned about, which really do have the same themes as the residents of this community. So I don't think anyone will be surprised when we start to talk about some of these issues. So we'll start with Nadia to answer this first. Accessing talent is a significant barrier to economic development locally and nationally. What specific plan does your party have to address this challenge?
So essentially, we're looking at getting more workers into Sudbury or putting people to work. I recently met with the trades union the other day, and they were telling me that they have the workers. What is missing is the work. They're ready to build homes. They're ready to get the jobs done. We just need to invest in public infrastructure, and that is a promise that the NDP will do. In addition to that, we know this country was built on immigrants. My parents immigrated here to make a better life, and they weren't alone. I have a lot of friends who are either immigrants or children of immigrants. So we need to clear up the backlog that has been caused by the Liberal government. We also need to streamline foreign credentials so that they can come here and start working. In addition to that, we need to make sure that we have the services in place so new Canadians can integrate into our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian?
The region of Sudbury, the city of Sudbury, is obviously growing, and it's growing for the first time in a long time. And we need to make sure that we have the work and the supports to back that up. Our government, our party, if they form government, has a couple of plans in place already or suggested. One is that we'll train 350,000 new apprentices over the next 5 years with an expanded union training and innovation program. We'll restore the $4,000 apprenticeship grants that were canceled and now seem to be reinstated. We'll have better union jobs for young people, more homes built by our skilled trades workers, and more for those young people to live in. We know that Pierre Poilievre has been talking about a process to Blue Seal workers and make sure that foreign trained workers are fast-tracked into their jobs. We hear too many times that we have engineers, physicians, nurses, driving cabs, working at restaurants, doing jobs that are not suited to their training, and we want to make sure that those workers, and listen, I've been living in Sudbury for over 50 years. Sudbury's changed an awful lot with its diversity. We have to make sure that new Canadians, as Nadia has said, are trained quickly and make sure that they can get into our workforce to make sure we have a difference here in Sudbury.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So when I meet with businesses, one of the major issues that they identify is a shortage of skilled labor. And perhaps the most significant program that we've seen that has made an instrumental difference in that here for Sudbury and Northern Ontario is the ARNIT program, the Northern Immigration Pilot Program. And last year, our government announced that it would no longer be a pilot program, that it actually would become permanent in Sudbury. And it is an incredible program because what it does is that it matches businesses and what they need in terms of skilled labor with those talents, so that when people come, they are coming sponsored with positions. The other thing we've done is we've worked really closely with our colleges, Collège Boréal and Cambrian, on training and apprenticeship training. Unions as well have really stepped up, and they have done a lot of training through their skill centers. And just recently, through Mark Carney has announced that we will double the investments with unions in their training centers from 25 million to 50 million. We'll also offer some grants for apprenticeship up to $8,000 for people, and I think that that will be very important. And then there's also greater investments in our colleges and in our colleges as well, so that we can ramp up those types of investments and encourage people into these trades.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next question. So we'll start with Ian this time. Ian, what are your party's plans to reform Canada's regulatory and permitting processes for major critical minerals, so such mine expansions, and infrastructure projects to ensure clear, predictable, and expedited timelines, all while ensuring meaningful consultation and environmental stewardship?
There's a couple of things that we've announced, and I just want to start by saying any policy that our party puts out is available, conservative.ca. So I just want to get that out there now. We always publish everything. It's available for you all to review. So if there's anything you don't catch or anything you're thinking about, I don't know if all the parties do that, but we do, and you could find it under the news section. In regards to the sorry, I forgot that. Thank you.
And permitting
in regards,
processes.
in regards to the regulatory permits, and this will be there too, we have, Pierre Poilievre has suggested that we are going to try to eliminate red tape. Red tape doesn't mean environmental issues. It doesn't mean blowing through the environment. It doesn't mean not consulting with our Indigenous partners. What it means is getting things off of bureaucrats' desks and into the workplace. So we're trying to get rid of ongoing red tape that is specifically holding up projects for whatever reason. We know that we've had some stalled economy issues, particularly in mining over the last 5-6 years in regards to just permits not being issued. We know that there's a gold mine very close by that's been held up for years and costing millions of dollars in response to my discussions with local mining industries as of this week. Our permits will be taking place within a year's time. We're going to also pre-approve corridors to make sure that we don't get hung up on trying to get sites approved when projects become available. Pierre Poilievre has suggested that we will pre-approve these things, make sure that all the environmental and all the studies are done before the project even comes to market or even comes to mind, to make sure that it gets done quickly. And again, we want to make sure that our environmental piece is respected, and we want to make sure that we're using our partnerships with Indigenous peoples to make sure that we have growth in that area as well.
Thank you. Viviane, can you go next, please?
So this work began with the launch of the critical mineral strategy. And what that strategy does is it committed $4 billion to help kickstart the investments in exploration, development, and also the creation of new mines. And it also includes a bundle of tax credits, too, that help a great deal these young startup mining companies. It also, though, looks at policies and procedures in opening up new mines. So right now in Canada, it can take up to 8 to 10 years to open a new mine, and that's too long. And that has been the case for decades in our country. And we know that we need to reduce that, and that's where the critical mineral strategy that had a very large and intensive consultation process attached with it, that included people in the business as well as Indigenous leaders and so forth. And we know that we can bring that down. Australia, for example, that has very similar standards that we would have, can open a new mine in 5 years. And that is the goal that we want to bring and facilitating that. And we know that we can do that. Having said that, we also have to be very respectful of jurisdictions. The Ontario Mining Act is really what guides the opening of new mines. The federal government, and I have said this specifically to the Ring of Fire, once agreements are reached and the mine is ready, we're there. We're there at the ready. We've already committed the dollars needed for the infrastructure, building roads, building the bridges. And I will tell you, for example, for Frontier Lithium, which is one of the largest finds in northwestern Ontario, we announced $122 million for exactly that type of infrastructure in March.
For the question. So we know that we have 9 working mines here in Ottawa, 2 mills, 2 smelters, and a nickel refinery. I have a husband who works at Valet and reminds me that every night. And what is also important to note is that Sudbury can be a critical minerals processing hub to the world. We just need to get it done. And this requires steady investment in critical minerals and investment. Yes, we do want to see the Ring of Fire developed, and we will get it done. But we need to do it in a way that respects First Nations and their rights and their territories. And this means free, prior, and informed consent with First Nations, led by First Nations. With regards to red tape, I get spidey sense every time I hear we're going to cut the red tape and we're going to rush through it, because that always means that someone loses out. And what we've seen time and time again, that person losing out are either Indigenous peoples or workers or both. So the NDP will safeguard that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to an audience question, but it's going to be a bit of a merge of a few of them because we have some that are same subject. So many of your platforms have a lot of programs, a lot of initiatives in social services, in environmental stewardship, all very important. And then we have, a threat of an economic downturn with tariffs, the threat of tariffs, and some real and some potentially coming, and that uncertainty in the economy. So there's 2 ways that you can pay for that. You can make cuts to other programs, or you can increase taxes or find other revenue sources. So we'll start with Viviane. How do you plan to fund that? What does that look like for your party?
Suggest it's not one or the other, and that it's both. And that is the approach that this government is going to take. It is going to take an approach of fiscal prudence. And Mark Carney government has committed to balancing the budget within 3 years. But at the same time, you also need to invest, and especially with the threat of tariffs, where we have a threat to much employment here in Canada. That is where you look for those investments. And there are many ways that you can do that. Number one, we're going to reduce the barriers to intertrade within our provinces. And we recognize that there's over $200 billion in revenues that could be made with provinces doing business and trade amongst each other. For many, many years, it was tough to move that. But now with the common enemy, premiers are at the table wanting to do that work. The other thing we will do is lessen our reliance on the U.S. and start looking at other markets beyond North America as allies to our business. And that is a very important piece as well in terms of investing and growing our economy. So it really is an approach that you can do both of those at the same time.
Just a bit of clarification. Can you give me an example of one of those, of what you believe is an easy win in eliminating interprovincial trade barriers?
Things that they can look at very quickly is the regulatory requirements around transportation, and we can make that far more seamless in transporting goods and trades across our provinces. So that would be one example. In terms of growing our economy with new international partners and allies, we already have 15 trade agreements with 52 countries. So there's great opportunity there to enhance that.
Thank you. Nadia?
And thank you for the question. So how will we fund them? First, I want to point out the last time that the Liberals aimed to balance the budget back in the early 90s under Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin as a finance minister, we saw one of the biggest cuts to our health and social programs, and that's something that we're aiming there. This is something that Carney has implied. This is something that Polyev has implied. But we've seen anytime they want a balanced budget, it means cutting the services that mean a lot to people, to workers here in Sudbury and all over Canada. What the NDP will do, we will make sure that the highest earners will be taxed appropriately, and that will be invested in people. We will end the $12 billion subsidy to the fossil fuel industry and invest that in people, in workers, and in a green economy that will stimulate our economy.
Go ahead, Ian.
One of the misconceptions is that Conservative government is all about cuts. We're essentially about making efficiencies and trimming waste, and there is a lot of waste in the federal government. I mean, we've seen multiple issues over the past 4 years, particularly with the ArriveCan app, particularly with the Green Slush Fund Energy program. We see a lot of money go out the door in Ottawa, and we don't get any results with that money. So we want to make sure that we get efficient and we're not wasting your taxpayer money. As far as what projects we want to do to pay for it, we don't want to increase taxes, we want to increase the economy, and I think that was evident in my opening statement. We want to go east-west with pipelines. We want to make sure that our resources, yes, oil, but also natural gas. And when you're talking about the environment and how to improve it, we know that Ontario effectively lowered its emissions by getting off of coal and onto natural gas, and then they brought in renewables afterwards. So we need to get our products to market, and we need to make sure that that growing economy goes back into the programs that Canadians need.
Thank you. So the next question, we'll start with Nadia. So this one's about air connectivity in Sudbury and in the north. So, which is vital for our economic development and accessibility. So what steps will you take to enhance air travel options and affordability for residents and businesses in our region? Does your party support more federal funding for regional airports? And what are your plans to address labor shortages in the aviation sector, including pilots, which is a really big issue when it comes to air travel in rural and northern areas, and even in our larger metropolitan areas in Canada?
So yes, the NDP will invest in regional airports. We see how important the Sudbury Airport is, and I think there's opportunity for it to grow. We've seen it grow in recent years, and I think we need to put more money into that. As with anything, the NDP party is the workers' party. We will invest in workers. We will train people. I used to work at the airport, and there was always a shortage, and there was always promises to train more, to hire more, but we were always told to do more with less, and I saw that. We talk about burnout in certain sectors. There's definitely the burnout with pilots, with passenger service agents, with ground handlers, cabin services. And so what we need to do is we need to ensure that more workers are employed. And as I said, the NDP is about the Workers' Party. We will invest in people.
Thank you, Nadia. Ian?
I agree with Nadia on the one point for sure. We need to be investing or getting more employees. One of the problems that we're seeing with the airport and in the federally regulated industries is there's a lot more sick time being logged, and we're having trouble keeping up with our employees. So I think, we can't change sick time necessarily because people do get sick, but we can change the backup and the power that we have to make sure employees are able to staff the day. The airport itself, obviously, we are very much into regional travel. We want to connect cities, and again, our leader, Pierre Poilievre, has been to Sudbury at least half a dozen times in his 2.5 years as leader. He is very connected to the north. We know that he is going to invest here. We don't have a specific plan with airports, but I think the airport definitely has to increase its credibility. I know that a lot of people don't fly anymore because of canceled flights. I know that people are driving to Toronto in the 3.5 hours with the new traffic and 4 lanes. So we need to make sure that the airport wins back trust. We need to encourage new airlines to come. It is nice to see some of the new airlines here. It's unfortunate that we've lost some of the other airlines along the way. There's no reason why we can't be flying Air Canada Jazz, we can't be flying Porter, we can't be flying WestJet, Sunwing, Bearskin, and all of those airlines out of here to allow more flexibility and more travel plans for people who need to get to other places in the world to conduct business or for pleasure.
Thank you. Go ahead, Vivienne.
So in the briefings that I've had with the leadership team at the Sudbury Regional Airport, they said that we're starting to see some interesting trends coming out of COVID. And that is that centers that are beyond a 5-hour drive radius from a major center have seen their flights, their travel numbers be restored to pre-COVID. But for regional airports that are within a 4.5 to 5-hour distance from a major center, in our case Toronto, people are choosing to drive. And so they haven't had their volumes restored to pre-COVID levels. And that is why we're seeing less flight options. And so those regional airports within that radius, it's not just Sudbury, we can think of the others, if you could just draw that circle around Toronto. So I think there is a role for governments to play in helping those specific airports that are struggling with that new trend that has emerged. And so investments in that are important because regional airports are key to our economic prosperity. They also play a role in healthcare. We know that many specialists, physicians fly in and use these airlines, so it's very important for us to make those investments.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Or comment on people choosing to drive. I'm one of those that I'll drive to Toronto as opposed to fly out, and the biggest reason is convenience and cost. It costs a lot to fly Sudbury, Toronto, getting there, the inconvenience of flying Toronto, Sudbury. So it is a convenience thing. So investing is one thing, but the investment has to mean that it needs to be lower prices. We need to streamline airport experience. And also investing in people, it means, again, as I said, I used to work at the airport. The pay is not the greatest. The work is not the greatest. But we do it, we did it, they continue to do it. So we need to ensure that workers are happy. We need to ensure that we're streamlining the experience at the airport.
Thank you. I have a few questions here from the audience about climate change. So I'm going to ask a question about climate change, but I'm also going to add a part about businesses on there. So we'll kind of get hit to different areas with that question. So maybe talk about some of your party's platforms to mitigate the effects of climate change, and you know the cost to those and the funding plan for those. But I also want to ask about small and medium-sized businesses and the grants available to them to be able to put those enhanced sort of protocols and policies into place, because small and medium-sized businesses don't always have the money, the time, the resources, and the expertise to adhere to some of that new legislation and policy. So maybe we'll start with Ian.
On the macro picture, as far as climate change, again, I think you've heard our idea. We have to be careful about compartmentalizing the emissions in the globe. We can't be too hung up on, you know, if Canada is producing 1.5% of the emissions, but we can help a country like India or China get off of coal with our gas and bring the emissions down 3 to 5%, I think that's actually a reasonable thing to do. And the other piece to that is we actually get to have some sort of benefit, economic benefit, from helping the climate with using our clean natural gas as opposed to the coal-emitting countries. We, as far as, again, a macro project with climate, we are definitely looking at bigger pictures, carbon capture and technology versus taxation. We want to make sure that we're always looking for alternative sources of energy. We want to make sure that we are, you know, and any government should be looking for alternative sources of energy, whether that's nuclear, whether that's, you know, the holy grail of fusion or hydrogen. All of those things are on our radar for exploration and working with the provinces. As far as the small businesses, at that level, I suppose we're getting into heat pumps, and we're getting into making your buildings more efficient and making sure that things are not using up too many of the resources and the emission-producing resources. On that level, again, we're not looking to cut any existing programs. I haven't seen anything, I'll be perfectly honest, out of our party in regards to those small to medium businesses. But we have not suggested any way in cutting any programs that are existing.
Thank you. Vivian?
So the Liberal government has had the strongest climate policy that we've seen in the past 8 years. And the recent endorsement of former Green Party candidate Dr. David Robinson would speak to his confidence in Mark Carney, as well as the Liberal government's approach to the environment. I will tell you that Mark Carney has said that he was the special envoy to the UN on environment and economics, and he's not going to abandon his values around that. The carbon price that has been removed from the consumer. And what he said is that we need to focus on what the real goal here, which is not a price on pollution, but it's lowering emissions. That is our goal. And there are many ways that we can go about doing that. And we're all very committed to keeping the price on pollution for heavy emitters in our industry. We've set a cap on emissions in the oil and gas sector, not on production, but on emissions. And that cap will remain in place. So it's very important that we remain committed to protecting our environment, and we can be assured that that will happen with the kind of skills and abilities that you see in Mark Carney. In terms of small businesses, they benefited greatly from the carbon rebate. I spoke to 3 businesses when they received theirs, and it was a significant amount to help them make those changes. And those are and that is what we can do in terms of creating incentives for people and businesses to lower their emissions. And that is what we'll continue to do as part of our environmental plan.
we know the climate is getting worse, and we're feeling its effects today, and this is affecting our homes, our small and our medium-sized business. Insurance costs of climate-related disasters has been spiking. In 2023, it was $3.1 billion. So we know we need to take action. I mentioned that there's $12 billion in fossil fuel subsidies. This is the most of any of the G20 nations. We need to end those subsidies. We need to reinvest that money into the green economy. We need to electrify our economy. We need to make the big polluters pay. And from that, we will invest into renewable energies, and this will make it better for small and medium-sized businesses.
Thank you. So we've touched a little bit on tariffs and plans for tariffs, but I'm going to ask a little bit more of a specific question on this. So the Chamber Network has been advocating for a very long time to eliminate trade barriers between provinces. You see it at the provincial Chamber of Commerce level, at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce level. So this is not something that is new or that hasn't been brought forward to government in the past. So what do you believe, and we'll start with Viviane, what do you believe is the biggest barrier for interprovincial trade, and how do you intend to fix it?
So the biggest barrier has been the lack of cooperation, and there really hasn't been a real strong incentive for provinces to create those trade opportunities amongst themselves. I mentioned earlier, they actually saw themselves as competitors. But suddenly now you have a common enemy, and that common enemy is the Trump administration. And now premiers really and truly are coming to the table and recognizing the value in being able to work together. And I will tell you that the Committee on Internal Trade has identified over $200 billion in opportunities. And that has also been confirmed by Trevor Toome, who's an economist at the University of Calgary. And what they are identifying is that there is the prospect of lower prices for consumers as well as higher productivity. And it can happen through reduced regulatory duplication, increased productivity, the labor mobility, which I had talked about, being able to transport goods more seamlessly through provinces. There's procurement reforms that we can do. There's market access expansions, where that's an identification of about 25 to 30 billion annually. And then there's the logistics and the transportation integration. So the opportunities are there. They have always been there. But there wasn't the willingness and the incentive for premiers and provinces to work together. That has now changed. The conversation at the table, first it was Minister Anita Anand. It is now Minister Chrystia Freeland, who tell me that the eagerness of premiers now to do away with those barriers is quite genuine, and the work has begun on it.
Thank you. Nadia?
Controversial. The biggest barrier is past federal government. They took advantage of a section of the BNA Act of 1867 that enabled them to get involved if any change, any trade affected more than one province. I think the best way to eliminate, to deal with this, is for the federal government to stand back and to lead, as opposed to keeping on putting up these barriers. We've seen, Vivian, you mentioned that premiers have been seeing themselves as competitors. It's because the system was exploited by past federal governments so that they were set up as competitors as opposed to partnership within this federal nation. So that's what I believe. We need to step back as a federal government and act as leaders on this issue.
Thanks, Ian.
I think that we're going to get agreement across this table here that we all want to get rid of interprovincial trade barriers. They are barriers. They're not tariffs in the sense, but they act the same way. I think today, just as I was coming in, I heard on the CBC of all places that Doug Ford, I think, has just done an agreement with one of the Atlantic provinces. So you're right, the premiers are going to come together and make this happen. We've all been out in the community, we've all been to businesses. I was in a business last week, and they said it's impossible to get into Quebec to do any sort of business because of the barriers that are put up there. And those things need to come down at the provincial level. Again, I say this, my medical degree comes from the Medical Council of Canada. I'm a Canadian trained doctor, but I'm licensed in Ontario, and if I want to go anywhere else in the country, I need to somehow fill out a form, do some paperwork, and it's difficult. We have nurses that are the same way. We have drivers and truck drivers, as Vivian alluded to, that are not as connected because of the licensing acts. We have to make sure that we have, not an Ottawa knows best policy, but where Ottawa gets out of the way and lets the provinces make trade barriers disappear, so we could, again, I think all of us want to open up our country from east to west to get rid of our reliance on north to south. And again, I think another thing that we're all going to agree on is Donald Trump has done a really good job at uniting us and making us stand up for Canadians and our own economy.
Thank you. So our next question, Nadia, you can start. What are your party's plans to modernize the tax system, which hasn't seen a major revision in over 50 years? And I think this is an important question for residents and businesses.
Well, as you've been hearing on the campaign trail, and as I've been telling people at the door, we want to revamp it in a way where we have the biggest earners pay their fair share, and we want to increase at the lowest level what is forgivable on the tax rate. We want to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share and everyone is getting what they deserve to keep more money in their pocket and reinvest in workers, reinvest in our community.
Let's ask you to expand on what would fair share be, in your opinion?
Fair share in what sense? In what I just said?
Yeah, so you said
Okay,
everyone
sorry.
has to pay their fair share. So what is a fair share?
We want to see, well, we've been hearing a lot about tax havens that have been in place by consecutive liberal and conservative governments. It's about closing those tax havens or eliminating them. It's about closing the tax loops that are now available that only the rich can afford, because you can afford that really good accountant. It's about, the floor, increasing it, so those that are minimum wage, those that are barely making a livable wage aren't paying as much taxes.
Just one more clarification. This is an important question for our businesses, so I will probably ask everybody for some clarification on this one. But what would one of those tax loops be? Like, can you give an example of one of those?
So just what is tax deductible, what is forgivable, and what isn't. So that's what we're looking to do, or that's what I would like to see. Just minimize what is tax deductible, making sure that they are proper for the business, as opposed to everything, well, not everything, but almost anything being tax deductible.
Okay, thank you. Ian?
Specific to current tax laws and tax policies, our government has suggested, our party has suggested that we will definitely cut the tax on the lowest bracket, which obviously affects all income earners who are in the tax bracket, by 15%. We are also looking to increase tax breaks for workers and people who are not in corporations or business owners. So that's kind of the opposite of what you're saying, but we have a situation where people are able to write off travel, write off expenses, and that applies to business owners only and not to our trades workers and our people who have to travel to get from job site to job site, particularly over 120 kilometers. We are looking at making that as a benefit. On the flip side, I think we're always open to simplifying the tax codes. I know that many accountants can't stand the Canadian tax codes because there is so many different rules for different people, and I think we want to simplify that as much as we can. We want to make sure that corporate tax small business taxes remain small so that we're competitive, particularly now as we've got this competition going on with our north-south border. We want to make sure that we can retain businesses and keep them here with competitive tax rates. It doesn't help us if Donald Trump's going to lower the corporate tax or lower the business tax so that our companies are flooding out of our country heading towards lower tax areas.
So, Ian, just to clarify, do you think that would be an important priority for the Conservative Party of Canada to enact and make happen that tax reform?
There's been no specific platform to date. And keep in mind, we had this debate in the seniors. What people don't understand is every day there's a new platform piece. I don't have a blue book. There's no red book. There's no orange book anymore. So every day we get policies. I haven't seen a specific piece for that, but the Conservatives are always champions of simplifying taxes and making sure we're competitive in the world.
Thanks. Go ahead.
So first and foremost, I would suggest that before you take steps to modernize a tax system, that you would need to do some broad-based consultation. Government alone should not be making changes that would be this vast and this impactful to businesses as well as to consumers. So I would suggest that this is an area where public policy and getting that public consultation would need to match fiscal policy and fiscal agendas. So first and foremost, that would be very important. So while you don't necessarily know what you would end up with, I think the goal has to be stated from the start, and that is simply to bring some tax relief. Either that is tax relief to consumers or tax relief to businesses, and also incentivizing and using taxes in that way. And we've seen that with some of the tax that we've seen in the mining industry to help business startups, where we give tax credits. So that too is a big formulation of our taxing policy in being able to attract investments into our country, but also help young entrepreneurs or small startups here as well. In terms of for consumers, I think that there's an opportunity for us to bring some tax relief to some of those income tax brackets. We've announced a tax to the middle class. And when you look at that 1% tax break that we've looked at for a family with two incomes, that would result in over $800 of savings a year. So there are things that we're already doing, but again, I would say that you would need to do some very good consultation to come out with what would be a really good plan.
Thank you. There have been many revisions, over the past few years. So was there consultation on those revisions, or was it just implemented?
One specific example is for small businesses. We brought down the corporate tax down, which was 11%, and we brought it down to 9%, and that has made a significant impact for our small businesses. The other thing we did is we negotiated with credit card companies, MasterCard and Visa, to lower their transaction fees for small businesses, and we lowered them by 27%. And for small businesses across Canada, that represents a $1 billion saving. So there are some very tangible things we could do in consultation with those businesses.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, Ian, I'll ask you to answer first on this next question. It's a question from the audience. All parties have platforms to address the housing crisis. It's important that we address the underlying issues that brought on the housing crisis. In your opinion, what are they, and how are you planning to correct them?
So there are multiple reasons why we're in housing crises. One of the easy reasons to see is our increase in immigration. We have increased our numbers to levels that have outstripped our housing, outstripped our healthcare, outstripped jobs and opportunities. And it's not fair to our new immigrants. This is not an anti-immigrant stance. This is just a controlled flow of immigrants to make sure that we have the available resources available to them and make sure that they have somewhere to the resources to come home to Canada. So that's one thing I think that has been pushing the housing crisis higher. We've increased our population size, I think, by about 3 million people in the last several years, which is well above our average, and that was a very targeted number set up by the current government to try to increase immigration. I think there's also the cost of living and the expense and the housing. I won't even call it a bubble because it's been going on so long it doesn't even feel like a bubble, but the cost of housing is through the roof and unattainable for most young people today. And that's basically brought on by not enough houses being built. So we do have to make sure our supply is there. We're going to incentivize building new homes by cutting the GST on new houses, which up to 1.3 million, which seems kind of like a high number, I think, here in Sudbury, but certainly in the bigger cities, that number would be an average house. So we want to make sure that we do that. That takes the money out of the developer's pocket and right back to the consumer, because it may allow you to move up a bracket of house costs if you're looking at saving 5% on the total cost. It may allow you to open up, you move from your existing home into a new build and open up your existing home for someone else to move into. So we need a flow of housing for sure. And the other thing, as far as, when we get into low housing and homelessness, I don't know if that's part of this question, or is that somewhere else?
I think it would be definitely.
Yeah, so I think as far as getting into homelessness, we know that homelessness is not a reflection on people. There's obviously reasons for people who are homeless, and generally speaking, mental health and addictions are two of the biggest reasons for that. These are people that can't access services, don't have the ability, means, or even a desire to access services that we do have available. And again, our platform piece on addiction is treatment. We are full in on treatment. We want to make sure that up to 50,000 people receive full treatment for addictions, and that would include bringing them back to stable lifestyles, to being off drugs and addictive substances, and making sure they become integrated or at least put back into society where they could have meaningful and more productive lives, which again will help on the mental health side as well.
Thank you, Vivian.
The housing plan that has been announced in this election builds upon the progress that we've seen in the housing plan that was launched by the Liberal government and has seen some housing startups. And here in Sudbury, there's been $130 million in investments in federal housing. We see many of the projects underway now. There's the Project Manitou up on top of the Kingsway with the big crane. And I will tell you that that is one of the largest housing projects underway in Ontario, and it's happening right here in Sudbury. There's also the Coniston Seniors Housing Complex. We're working with Walden and Lively on getting one started there. There's the Lorraine Street, Pearl Street, Spark Street. And what we've done is we've looked at the spectrum of housing that is required. Seniors housing, affordable housing, and as well as transitional housing to help people who are unhoused or at risk of being unhoused, and helping them get into housing that would also have wraparound services and help them transition. What's really interesting about the new housing plan that we've announced is we've recognized that the government directly has a role to play in doing affordable housing. Private developers won't, and that's not a criticism, it's just not in their interests. And so the federal government will directly work with other levels of government, and we will build those affordable homes that are needed.
So we know that the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in Sudbury is just over $2,100 a month. We know that the cost of housing has gone up by 89%, while income has only increased 21% in the last 10 years. So yes, we do have a housing crisis in Sudbury and in all of Canada. What has led to this? What are the underlying issues? Not so much the influx of immigrants, but the reality is governments, both federal and provincial, stopped investing in housing. And we saw it started with the trickle-down economy of the Brian Mulrooney's of the world. We saw what Mike Harris did to Ontario when they stopped investing in housing. And so we're left in a situation here in 2025 where we don't have enough homes. We don't have enough apartments. So we see that what we're doing, or what governments have been investing in, both at the federal and provincial level, is building homes, but we're seeing that it's the building of those big mega mansions, those unaffordable homes. What we need to do is we need to invest in affordable, sustainable living. We need to build homes and apartments that everyday people can afford. We don't need those big lakeside houses, or we don't need to tear down the green belt to build these big houses. We don't need GST cuts on homes up to $1.5 million. I know, Ian, you said that's quite common in Toronto. It depends where in Toronto, but today it's the average cost, but it shouldn't be the average cost. What we need to do is that we need to invest in building homes. We need to get back into the government's, into the business of building homes. As I mentioned, I met with the trade unions. They have workers ready to go. They just don't have the work for them. We need to start investing in that.
Thank you, Vivian. We'll start with you for the next question. How do you and your party plan to attract new industries or investments to our community?
So certainly, critical minerals provides an incredible opportunity for Sudbury. But what's important is that we also look at developing the supply chains and the value chains around that. And that is something, those are investments that will be very important for our community and will create generational wealth for our community as well. Another key area that we really need to focus on is our small and medium-sized enterprises. When people say they work in the private sector, 80% of them work in a small business. Small businesses create good jobs in a community, they invest in the community, and it's very important that we provide supports to them. So FedNor, which is the Federal Development Agency, has been instrumental in helping those small and medium-sized businesses. They've also done a lot of projects towards reconciliation with our First Nations, and where we've been able to help them and assist them as they've been wanting to get involved in some tremendous business opportunities and have had high success with that. So in this last budget, 2020, in the 2024 spring budget, FedNor funding was increased to $25 million. There was also some new funding streams that were created in FedNor for AI. Those are all very important tools for and avenues for our businesses and attracting businesses, as well as helping existing businesses and helping businesses to expand. The other things that we've done are things such as No Beep, which is investments in Black entrepreneurs who face, what we know, challenges. And so to help them as well, there have been considerable investments in No Beep across Northern Ontario. They're situated here in Sudbury, but they service a large region. So those are really important investments that then pay dividends in Sudbury. I would tell you that there's also other sectors, such as research and innovation, that are very important. Our tourism sector as well. There's $200 million in spending every year that happens in Sudbury through tourism. So it's very important that we also look at that sector.
Thank you. Nadia?
So No, we need to diversify our economy, and Sudbury's been doing a really good job at diversifying the economy. We've seen with the growth of the education and the health sector, we've seen the growth of various small business and medium-sized business all over town. And yes, it adds a richness to our community. What would we do to bring in or entice people to come to Sudbury and open up businesses? We need to talk to municipalities. We need to see what their needs are. The federal government needs to use its federal spending power and transfer money to municipalities so that they're able to put the projects in place to get small and medium-sized businesses here in Sudbury and to support small and medium-sized businesses. And in doing so, what we're doing is that we're investing in Sudbury and Sudburyans and people wanting to come to Sudbury. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian?
I think this is another important point, that Sudbury is growing. We've seen growth, and the more we grow, the more opportunities we're going to have, particularly for new businesses to arise. Again, we're very big on getting our critical minerals on working Ring of Fire, and that's going to be a huge boon for Sudbury in general with our mining equipment, mining technology, and mining companies. All of those people are going to see increased growth, which is going to bring new capital to the region privately. So I think we want to grow and encourage that private capital growth. FedNor is a government entity, right? That's not a liberal, conservative, or NDP thing. So we definitely want to make sure we support to FedNor and all the projects that they are aligning for the growth of Sudbury and bringing in new entrepreneurs and businesses. I think that all of us, again, have small business on mind. We want to make sure that we're not creating situations where it's uncompetitive for them in higher taxes or higher regulations. We want to make sure that we're working with our municipalities to support them either through FedNor or other grants that help just create the milieu for businesses to set up. But our piece is always going to be around increasing capital so that we're increasing the total amount of dollars in the system so that we can always, and increasing private capital, sorry, so that we can always feed and build off of those dollars with newer businesses coming in.
Thank you. I might just ask everybody to expand a little bit on that one because we talked about what the opportunities were and a little bit, Ian, about, how to do that, but how will you bring that investment here? So if everyone can expand a little bit again on how they plan on unlocking that potential, that would, I think, be helpful just for clarifying the answers.
Starting here.
Yeah, we can start with you, Ian.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that, again, we're going to bring it here by making sure we don't have to go necessarily fish products. We have to bring the resources, make the conditions suitable for people to open businesses. And the FedNors of the world and the Paul Lefebvres of the world and the provinces are going to be all over the place. I think the mayor right now is in Asia. I mean, they are going to go out getting the businesses to come. We're going to be enabling the businesses to work. And again, we're going to get out of the way and make sure that Sudbury can develop its resources, make sure that Sudbury can grow without prohibitive, again, I hate to use the term, but red tape. Make sure that we're able, Nadia's got me afraid now. Make sure that we can clear the way to allow businesses to succeed with better tax structures and better, I suppose, competitive business rates so that they can succeed here versus other jurisdictions in the world or Ontario.
Thanks for that context. Nadia, do you want to go next?
Going to unlock this investment, you've heard it, it's keeping up with FedNor, but it's also simplifying the application for FedNor because it's not one of the easiest. I've applied for government funding and government subsidies. It's a job in and of itself, so we need to simplify that process. Again, I'm going to stress the federal government has under the Constitution has the federal spending power. It needs to transfer money to municipalities. It needs to sit down with the municipality, see what they need and what the federal government can do to help. And it is streamlining and bringing small business, making it easier for them to open up here in Sudbury, creating the conditions for them.
Has no shortage. Sudbury has no shortage of bright young entrepreneurs, business people who want to either come and invest in Sudbury or grow their business. And the role of federal government is to assist them in doing that. And so, for example, programs that such as our Northern Immigration Program helps that, because we'll get them the skilled labor that they need. FedNor helps those businesses and entrepreneurs with the startup funding that they need. The other thing that we can do is, I've talked to a lot of mining startup companies, and they said they don't even want grants. What they're looking for is low interest loans so they can de-risk their project and attract investors. So again, that's a role that government can play. So really, the business of growing our business community happens with those entrepreneurs. The government's role is to help them and assist them.
You have a response?
Sorry, not so much a response, but I think just building on that, Vivian and I were at NORCAT a little earlier in the year, and that's just one more area. What's going on at NORCAT is incredible. They are the business lab. They are a lab for new business startups. It's incredible to see what's going on at that level, and obviously they do get provincial and federal funding, so that just ties into what Vivian's saying. But I think NORCAT is a very specific example of a somewhat private company that gets government funding to help function, but they are doing a great job at bringing new businesses to Sudbury, and I'd encourage anyone to see what they're up to.
Thank you. I'm really glad to hear all three of you talk about that collaboration between different levels of government when it comes to this, because you know, as a chamber, when we advocate for different things, it's not always one, right? Sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three. So I'm happy to hear that. Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask one simple question now to everybody. This is selfish. This is chamber related, so not so much for the public. But what is the last chamber event that you attended? So we'll start with Vivian.
Part answer to that. So the last public chamber event that I attended was hearing the report from the new dean of the medical school. And it was so exciting to hear what his vision was, but also to hear about the challenges that are being faced right now with our physician shortages and the role that the medical school can play. The second part of that answer is that when the threat of the tariffs first began, I reached out to GSDC and also the Chamber of Commerce and suggested that we work together, bring our mining sector leaders to the table and talk about understanding what is the impact specifically to Sudbury on the tariffs and what were some of the things that we could do. And I want to thank the Chamber who graciously hosted that meeting. And it was a very insightful conversation and dialogue that we had in understanding what the tariffs meant to Sudbury and our sector.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Zach's never invited me to a chamber event, so I cannot recall the last time I've been to a chamber event, and not because I don't want to attend, but most of the chamber events have conflicted with either my work schedule or my other obligations in community events. I did visit and I met with members of the chambers when I was working with Jamie West, but yeah, no, I can't remember.
Ian?
Again, I think I can answer for both Nadia and myself. We were both at the chamber event in 2021 with the last election debate. Even though it was online, we were at that event. No, I don't think that I have been to a chamber event recently. Again, I've got some time commitments as well. The meeting of the new dean, I was working. I was actually invited, I'm sad to say, but I was working that day, and you know, I can't say that I've had one other than that last event.
Thank you. Well, you can visit us anytime between elections. It's fine too. So thank you. Now we'll do our wrap up with our closing remarks. So we'll start in reverse order. So we'll ask Nadia to close it up.
What about Palestine? What about Palestine? Do you all support mass murder?
Thank you. We have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions. Sir, thank you. That is not. Well, I'll ask the chamber, one of our chamber staff to go ask security. Thank you. I really do appreciate that we got many questions. No, we got many questions tonight. And I do want to reiterate that thank you. I just want, let me reiterate that this is a Chamber of Commerce event that we have opened to the public. Questions are a mix of business and also ones from the audience. Thank you. We'll do our closing remarks in a moment, but
Are you finished? Are you done? Are you done?
No, I'm not.
that's okay.
I'm not.
This was a business-oriented debate. You can't even say his name. Listen, if you want to talk after
Excuse
or
me?
outside, I'm happy to meet you.
If you just let us finish up, we'll answer your questions. We'll come talk to you after.
Condemning genocide is not anti-Semitic, okay? I know
Do you guys mind if I skip closing remarks and I can wrap it up because we're live? We are live. So I just want to respect people's time.
Is condemning genocide anti-Semitic? Answer the question. It's a very easy question to answer. Policy that you care about at all? It's an easy question to answer.
It's not on the docket. It wasn't asked.
Would I be able to just say something, please? If you just for one moment, just let me reiterate that this is Chamber of Commerce event. It's mostly geared towards businesses, and we have opened it up to the public. So thank you very much. I got through as much as I could. So.
Start my closing remarks.
Okay.
So thanks again to the Chambers of Commerce for hosting, for the audience participating, and for the media sharing this with the wider community. Small businesses were in the line of fire of many of the changes and upheavals we faced over the past few years. It's been excellent hearing some of their issues tonight, and they are rightly worried about the impact of the new economic reality for Canada. They're also right to be worried that the next government will wear away at the fundamental values that makes Canada great. If Poilievre gets his way, we can be sure that a few Canadians will pay less tax, but the modest incomes of small business owners and their workers alike won't increase. They may promise a reduction in regulation, but it's those very regulations that prevent the largest corporate actors from tearing our businesses apart and tearing our business community apart, not to mention the environment and the workforce. From the Liberals, all we hear are two words: Mark Carney. Sudburyans deserve someone whose focus is on this community and not just on the leader. Northerners deserve someone who will fight for this region. That's a message I'm bringing tonight for businesses, for peoples, for tradespeoples, for teachers, and for everyday workers. We will not let the North be forgotten. It's not about which one man will stand up. It's about who will stand up for you. I will fight to protect good jobs. I will fight for affordability. I will fight for economic and social prosperity because these go together. Sudburyans know I will fight for the North, and I will fight for you because that's what New Democrats do. Thank you.
Go to Ian next.
This is an important election. Canada is in dire need of change. The issues that put us in a weak position to deal with tariffs are the same issues that existed before Donald Trump. Again, I've told you I'll talk to you after. I'm quite happy to hear your question. Yeah, of course you don't want. You don't want to talk in a proper forum. I'm pretty sure none of us. It's a pretty.
Condemning genocide isn't
Pretty sure
No,
you just answered your
no.
question, dude.
Now, you've got a specific context you're going to bring up, but no, I think generally speaking, thank you.
You've already answered that committing.
So I've answered your questions. Can I continue with my remarks?
Do your thing.
Thank you so much. This is an important election. Canada is in dire need of change. The issues that put us in a weak position to deal with tariffs are the same issues that existed before Donald Trump. Right now, we have a prime minister who's willing to say anything and reverse course to get a vote. Let's look at the record and give credit where it's due. They reduced the carbon tax for now. It's what Conservatives have been demanding for years. And just a short while ago, in fairness, Vivian said Canada's carbon pricing system makes life more affordable by returning money back to Canadians, putting more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 families through pollution pricing rebates. Now, apparently everyone benefited from the carbon tax. They said it never impacted the cost of anything else. We're actually shamed if we question the carbon tax. But now they've paused it, and really the reason they paused it is to get votes. Apparently, it's the same with capital gains. Mark Carney has paused the increase, and all the Liberal MPs nodded with approval, obviously forgetting that a few months ago, and this is almost a direct quote, Liberals told us we need to pay more capital gains or live in a country where kids go to school hungry. We need a government that stands up for Canadians, not one which congratulates itself for correcting its own expensive and bad mistakes. I'm running here because we need a change in Ottawa. We need an MP who listens first and acts for the community. I've been saying it for years. I hope I can be your choice to deliver on the promise this election.
Thank you. Vivian?
Something I think everyone can agree on here tonight is that Canada faces a threat unlike any other in our history. In Trump, the world is watching someone prepared to blow up existing trade and security agreements, someone who is happy to disrupt global economic order, and someone who wants countries to bend to his will. But in a few short months, we have seen Canadians rally in opposition to this threat. We have rallied around the things that make Canada prosperous, that make Canada resilient, and which make Canada strong. There were times when Sudbury faced similar challenges. When the price of nickel fell, it always was followed by long shutdowns and mass layoffs. Being a resource town meant enjoying the booms as well as enduring the busts. So what did we do? We reimagined our future. We invested and we built. We built one of the largest integrated mining service and supply sectors in the world. We built universities, colleges, and a medical school. We built a thriving film festival, an internationally recognized science center, and a Nobel Prize-winning underground science lab. Tonight, I've talked about strengthening Canada with a new and emboldened spirit under a Mark Carney-led government. One that will allow us to build things we never imagined at a pace we never thought possible. As Trump's America retreats from the rest of the world as a reliable partner in trade and security, Mark Carney has shown he has the experience, the know-how, and the determination to lead Canada into the future. Mark Carney has said that the world needs more of Canada, and he's right. And what I would add to that is Canada needs more of Sudbury. Only a Mark Carney government has a plan to leverage the very best of Canada and also the very best of Sudbury. So let's get to work. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I'd like to thank the candidates for their participation tonight. I'd like to thank our event partner, Eastlink, for making this discussion available to as many people as possible, and to our host, Collège Boréal, for supporting us this evening. Remember to vote on April 28th. Advance polls are open from April 18th to 21st. So I really hope tonight gave you some information to help you as you cast your ballot during this federal election. So merci, bonsoir.